All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the first TLC conversation on teaching for the 2023 calendar year. Welcome back to those that joined us several times back in the fall. We had a lot of interest in today's topic on artificial intelligence. There was some material sent out, and I'm not exactly certain where to start, but I see that we've got some people on here that helped spark this idea. So if they are there and also have connected with us, if they'd like to go ahead and share their thoughts on this, and then we can open up to a general discussion.
Ross, I'll just say a couple of words real quick. I'm double booked, so I'm not gonna be able to linger very long. So, but no, I sparked this conversation because I didn't know. I mean, I'm just really curious, and it's a pretty deep and long rabbit hole to go down to start learning about this. But it seems like a lot of people are really very aware of this new thing that's out there, this Chat GPT in particular. So I heard from, was it Julian from North Carolina State? They said they'd already done some workshop. They'd done something at Clemson. They'd already been playing with it. I inspired my next door neighbor, as in my office mate, Dave teaches econometrics, and he went online and he started playing with it with some of his econometrics questions. And so lots of people, I think, it's just got a learning curve. And so maybe the best thing today is just, what have you learned and what's the best step forward? There seems to be, some people are analogous, are trying to make it analysis to similar to, because I can't pronounce the other word, when teaching math in the 1970s, when the handheld calculator came out. In other words, can this become an effective tool? One of the videos that I originally linked, I was really interested in a suggestion that you actually purposefully design assignments to actually send students to Chat GPT in a way to get them to do much like you would a Google search, but doing it as a narrative output versus a list of links output. And then building from that, designing questions and graded materials with the a priori assumption that they're going to go and use Chat GPT as a part of their background research or initial steps of completing the assignment. I'm not quite sure what that would look like. I haven't played with it enough to figure out how to be that creative. But there's definitely a situation where if we do what we've always done, Chat GPT will make it a lot easier for at least a subset of our students. That I'm absolutely certain of. And so we have to kind of rethink. Either we have to be indifferent to that fact, or we have to rethink what we do. So I guess that would be my opening comments.
Thank you, James. Anybody want to expand or provide a rebuttal to what James just said?
WT's library is offering a workshop on how to cite Chat RPT and AI intelligence. So I think that that's their way of trying to start a conversation on it. But yeah, they're doing a student workshop on how to cite and how to use it ethically here. So I'm not real sure, but that's what they're attempting to do. It's in February.
I'll just build on that. Just wondering, do we cite when we use Microsoft Word and the spell checker and grammar checker? Do we cite when we use, a predictive text and say, oh yeah, that's the text I want to use? All of this opens in my mind, where do we draw the lines between, we're already using AI, I guess is what I'm saying, and we don't cite it. Teaching and be developing a kind of cultural expectation about when you cite and when you don't. I think that's a real important question in my mind.
I think that's a very good point, Roger. And I think it goes back to, it can be a tool, but it's not the student's creative output process that's at work when you use this. And that's one issue I've got. Some of the articles that I included on the email from earlier today, those have been sent around here. And one of them, I think it was at the very bottom, the last article. If you read that one, and if you haven't, I highly recommend that you do. It did, put the idea out there similar to what Chelsea was referring to at what's going on with WT. Is this an opportunity where you might want to let the students use it on one assignment just to see, and then encourage them to go back and refine? I'm not sold on that just yet, because I still come to the point in my mind that the student's not doing the work. They're not using any creative brain cells, so to speak. They're typing it in to ChatGPT and coming out with an output. And that's not their work as far as I'm concerned. And I'll say some more about that later. I don't want to dominate the conversation.
I'll say something I've recently been looking at is not Chat GPT per se, but there's a similar AI built into a package called Packback that I use with my students. I see some people nodding, so some people know what Packback is. But basically, when you're in this and the students can start writing, they have to actively write in the app, the software, the website, whatever. And it gives them like a writing score and tells them like grammar suggestions, like, so it's like active feedback. And so it's the same type of AI technology, but to me, it seems like the more helpful AI technology, at least from an instructor standpoint. And so I actually am less concerned for my students in my classes because we're using that. They have to type it in there. So have I played with it as far as like pasting in what a Chat GPT has like put out? No, which will be a good thing that I'll want to look at. There is a group of us, Logan's in on the group, we're using old essays from freshman level class here at OSU, and we have some Chat GPT generated responses to the same prompt. And we're going to see if instructors are able to identify which ones are Chat GPTs and see on average, like, where does the Chat GPT's grade fall in comparison to our students? Because honestly, I'm going to tell you the Chat GPTs are probably going to fall either really high or really low compared to your students writing. So, but we're going to actually quantitatively look at that. But yeah, I think there's other AI that will help kind of balance maybe some of the concerns for Chat GPT. But it is interesting.
Has anybody actually been able to get into Chat GTP? Because if you go to the website, a lot of the times you'll get their servers are full and they can't allow anybody in. Has anybody been able to get into it and try it out yet?
I personally haven't, but several of my colleagues have, and it is just kind of a, when do you log on and do you get lucky and get in? But I guess the thing that I would add is that all of our playing around and futzing around and uploading questions and playing with it is actually bringing what we're afraid of closer to reality, because AI learns from every one of those. So every time we go online and test a question, every time we go on and post an essay, we're actually making AI better at getting closer to what we don't want it to be. So we are kind of bringing into reality the thing we fear the most.
Yeah, I was generating our fake papers for this study, doing what a student would do, dropping in questions that I've included on the prompt as the instructor, and having it kind of build the response. And I've like logged in at like 2 a.m. to try to get a spot on there. But the fear as I was doing that was like, man, I'm making this better for my students. But there's been some recent articles and publications that have come out about like ways to tailor your writing prompts to where the student, it won't be useful. The chat GPT will not be able, and you just tailor the prompt towards like a specific scenario in class or the student, and then the chat GPT is kind of useless because the response will not be related. But OSU actually just sent out an email to all faculty while we were on this that was telling everyone about Open AI Detector and GTP0, which are supposed to be chat GPT detectors. So they're encouraging professors to run everything through those to check.
Will, go ahead. I know you were about to say something.
Yeah, so I was curious, kind of, Ross, you were mentioning, what the short circuits as far as, whether it's their creative output. And one thing I'm trying to think through is what are those like course objectives or course outcomes that this is short circuiting, right? So like what is the student not getting practice or skills developed at? And one thing that concerns me is kind of this development of soft skills and being able to write short responses to questions via, when the student leaves, if they're an undergrad, they're going to leave and need to write some email responses. And, I guess the question is the company policy one where they can't use chat GPT or might they be able to? So I'm wondering if we could maybe have a discussion about what are those outcomes objectives that might be missing.
Will, were you directing that directly to me or just the group in general?
Oh, the group in general, because I don't have a lot of good ideas other than maybe some soft skills on kind of providing some answers to once they leave. But I don't know if other people have been more thoughtful than me about this one.
Yeah, I think I'd piggyback off of Will. I'd be curious to see what your all curriculum looks like in terms of communications. Like at K-State, we require basic speech and then 2 other communications classes that hopefully have some kind of verbal or written communication. Other than that, like there might be some nuanced classes like our agribusiness management strategies class that require writing. But I completely agree with Will. Like I think, speaking from K-State experience, we have this AgCom 400 Ag Business Communications writing course, and it's can turn into a complete monster. And it's for all majors, and they don't have the time and effort. They don't have the time and energy to cater to those students that are in it.
We have all the majors in our college have to have a W course. So in our strategy course that is heavily writing centric. I taught it when I first got here, and we now have somebody who's dedicated to that. But you're having them write different styles, different types of outputs. But again, this is in the context of strategy. In another major, it may be in the context of, I don't know, policy or I think the animal science folks, they do theirs tied to one of their introduction courses where they have to look at all kinds of the different species and some of the different, they cover a little bit of nutrition, a little bit of that and this. And so it's different from the required university writing course, which quite frankly has evolved more into how do you write a resume and a cover letter. And our alumni tell us that, the more of that we can give them to get some of those soft skills, not just the writing portion of it, but how to formulate an idea, how to, dig into a topic and make your case in written word or spoken word for that matter. Something that industry is, of course, looking for more of. So
I think what Stan was saying right there about making a point and an argument, that's where I'm coming from with regards to my concerns about it. I'm teaching an ag policy class, and yesterday I told them, don't try it. And that goes back to what Hannah was saying with the AI detection tools you mentioned, one of which I included a link to on the email from this morning. And I'll go ahead and say that I did get into Chat GTP yesterday and use the prompt for one of the essay questions I typically use in that course. And it came out with a decent essay in terms of its output. But, being the instructor, looking through things, it didn't get to the heart of what I was really looking for using that essay prompt. And then I used the detection tool, and it came back pretty well certain that it had been AI generated. So the one that I linked to in the email from this morning, at least right now, it looks like it could be a good detection tool. And obviously, the more that these tools get used, as James and some others mentioned, the better they'll be, hopefully, at catching these things.
So I have two things to say to kind of go with Will's comment. So my husband works for a big IT and company, TLC Ag, and I'm going to tell you, there's no problems in the industry side from using this stuff. Matter of fact, they're going to encourage it. Especially if you've ever tried to read an engineer's writing in a normal world. It doesn't exist. So especially a computer engineer. So there's going to be some of that they're okay with. So I think that's something to think about. To kind of Roger's point, while I understand that we somewhat have AI systems that are going on that's been around in the spell checks and things like that, that it is much different when a whole entire paragraph is being generated. And I think having at least teaching our students that whole entire paragraphs generated is substantially different than telling me a difference in a sentence structure. As somebody that is a horrible writer, that can be, I could see the point of some universities saying, let's teach them at least how, if we tell them that they have to cite it, then the professors will be more, they will know that they used it, if that makes sense. So if they're forced to, or not enforced, encouraged to cite it, then we would at least know it was done that way. Right. And then we could take it for what it's worth. You can look at those subpoints, not sentence structures no more. We're really like, did it get that policy question? Did it pull out those pieces that I was really trying to get through that I spend a lot of time with? For me, I'm looking to do more on a specific case study. So if they can integrate that information in, they're going to have to work really hard to get the AI system to kick out what I want. By the time they're done with it, they could have probably written the 3 paragraphs, right, and been done. So that's just a couple of my comments.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned case studies. I'm hoping that that's a safe spot for now. Is that, I watched the Wall Street Journal article video about it, and it was using metamorphosis and Ferris Bueller's Day Off as, how do you relate these two? And I was like, okay, none of my case studies are that popular. So hopefully we're safe in that realm. And I think that's one thing that maybe that's going to push me more towards, is doing more specific mini problems or scenarios that I'm developing specifically, and using case studies that might, avoid some of those issues.
In my ag finance class, I have the students write a 3-page paper and also give a 4 to 7 minute presentation on it. And part of the reason is, I spent a number of years in the seed business, and you do have to do writing, not just on emails, sometimes about a product or about some new project you want to do. And so I still think it's important for our students to be forced to do some writing because they will need it later in business. And then the other comment I guess I'd make is, and I haven't done this before and haven't felt I needed to, but one thing I could do is have the students write just in class a 1 paragraph or a 1-page essay and hand that in, maybe graded, maybe not graded. And then when they turn that 3-page paper in, I can compare, the writing style and the mistakes, or how well it's done as a protection. So that's a couple ideas.
I'll just add a couple of more comments. Timed writing is not a very good way of measuring someone's ability to write versus say having an assignment, they go home and they, have the week or something to write on. So I'm aware of that. And the other thing I was just going to clarify, not that spell checker and predictive text is the same thing, but just that there's a culture, we have a cultural sort of expectation that if you use those predictive text and spell checker and grammar checker, that you don't cite Microsoft. But we already on this conversation have a strong expectation that you would cite chatbot. So I think that's I wonder why that is, that we don't cite the one, but we do think we're going to cite the other. And if it's predicting the next word, maybe we don't cite it. But how many, what if we predict one sentence, we predict 2 sentences, we predict 3 sentences, and you say, yes, add those to what I'm writing. To me, it's interesting where we draw the lines and how we understand what gets cited and what doesn't, what's mine and what's not mine.
Well said, Roger.
So I'm kind of innocent in all this. I'm kind of new to teaching and just fascinated by it all. But one of the things I get really excited about is teaching my students who don't have a PhD in economics how to do a simple linear regression in Excel, knowing that in 3 clicks I can make a line in my graph. And so is that the same thing that I love that I can show my students how to use applied math without getting a PhD, because technology has pushed it down to a couple of clicks of a mouse. And I don't know, it seems like this might be where we're headed with the text. I have an opportunity to revise someone else's textbook, and the bots, the word grammar experts are showing me all the sentence structure that this previous author likes to use. And I kind of like that that they're doing that, because I wouldn't have noticed the sentence structure probably is not that big a deal, but I like the AI version better. and I've got enough experience that I laugh about stuff that used to be like standard practice in the industry that I'm challenging my students not to do. It's a great place to be. I don't have any answers, just questions. I love the discussion.
I think it was unreasonable for us to come up to any hard conclusions, but I'm just kind of curious, especially since some of this is, there are others out there that'll watch this later. And so hopefully they won't hold this to you, but would anybody be open to using it in a class and letting students try it?
I was thinking about it kind of in the sense how James brought it up. So I'm teaching agribusiness strategies, and I was thinking about how could I identify some situations in the business where they could throw it into chat GPT and kind of decide which strategies or what to do from that. Because I haven't had the chance to log on to it, but I saw some YouTube videos where the guy is talking about how he started a business using chat GPT and all these things. And I was like, oh, I wonder if there's some kind of case study exercise that they could then use chat GPT to come up with what solutions or potential things to do.
I mean, I don't think I would be opposed to it. I don't really think it fits in most of my classes, but I find myself yelling, well, not yelling, yelling at my students, instructing that use your resources. Like I'm continually amazed that like, if you don't know the answer, I'm like, Google it. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yes, just Google it. Like, I can't answer every question today for you all. So if you have a question, Google it, look it up in the textbook. So I'm always trying to tell them to use resources. Like, you know, in my ag finance class, use your finance calculator, use the thing. So I feel like Chat GPT has the potential to just be another thing for students to use. And in my classes, I don't personally see like a danger per se in it. But I also don't think there's going to be an ag finance, a reason for me to pull it up for them to use. But it is interesting.
I was talking in the hallway earlier today, and this topic kind of got brought up with the entomology professor. And so along the same lines of you can't tell, but it still help, like they're going to use their resources, right? And so she does a bug collection each year, and she's like, I have a minimum number. And she goes, I don't know if students order a bug from Etsy. Like, I know that that's not AI, but it's that same kind of concept of they still have to find a bug and like that. And she's like, at what point do you stop putting pressure on the professor to prove someone wrong, that they did this incorrectly, when it's at the end of the day, it's still on them, whether we decide if it is just another part of life ethically, like Microsoft Word or Wolfram Alpha for figuring out math problems. I mean, how is that different? Is that just slightly different because math, you're still learning a little bit by writing out those steps? So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know that I know many students here. I haven't heard any students talk about it here. I don't know that it's used a lot. I did read a short answer last semester, though, of a case study that I was like, this kid, you don't normally write this eloquently. But that could be anything. It's tell as old as time as somebody else writing it too. So, but yeah, I know that's not an AI parallel, but she faces some of the same things of like Etsy sells bug collection, and you can get these, but are they still learning in the process by trying to avoid doing the actual work? Do they still learn something in the process? I don't know. I don't think I would be opposed to doing some sort of case study thing if I could, but I think it's really cool the research that's being done on can professors tell the difference in a student written essay and a Chat GPT one.
So to me, hearing that, I almost want to say it almost speaks to, going back to like the idea of a flipped classroom. So that insect collection, they bring it in, but then you still validate it by basically asking them, okay, what kind of habitat do you typically find this kind of insect? So using that in-class time to say, to have a more honest process, you can easily use ChatGPT to get the same way they can Google any answer. But I'm thinking about this more in just terms of again, I guess authenticity. It's just, I really get fearful of any 100% online class now. I straight up, when I found out that this was taking place, I moved one of my 100% online classes to say, there will be an in-person final for this, just as a mechanism to make sure that there will be some portion of this class that will be honest to validate their knowledge. Yeah, I think utilizing that in-class time may be more of a way to make sure the authenticity is there.
So I'm going to throw out just kind of an concept or idea. One of the things that I find when I sit and I read multiple papers first of all, I want to poke my eyes out, but because it doesn't make me excited to read students' essays. But what I get in a tendency, and I'm probably the only one that does this, but like I read a really good one, right? And then I read another good one. And then I read a really shitty one. I mean, like, how did you put 5 words together today, dude? Right? Like, and I read one and the guy was high. So I know that he didn't get it. He couldn't write, right? So here's my concern if we don't teach them about this. I'm going to accidentally be more frustrated with somebody that's doing their real writing because I get good essays from the chat bot. And I mean, not that I do, I think we accidentally compare student to student. We somewhat have to, because that's how you know if you're getting to the information across to students, right? Like if one person doesn't get it, okay, they what were they doing that day, you know? But if 5 people aren't getting it, that matters. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a checkpoint for me. Maybe I'm the only one that does that, but that's kind of how I kind of see if I'm getting my information across. But if I have half or more of the class using this, I got 2 really honest people, but they just can't write. And I don't know the difference. Now we got problems. Does that am I making sense? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, I mean, I want to say that I would not be that way, but
I think this goes to a larger point. I think everybody still left on here knows you're not gonna catch 100% of the cheaters.
oh yeah,
But those that shortcut the system, they're gonna be found out in the workforce.
yeah.
So, I mean.
But
you
I
know,
don't want to give
time
one
and effort
student
you
a
want to
bad
put in
grade.
catching them.
You know, that was the only thing, is that I don't want to downgrade somebody because all these others have much better writing. And I've kind of actually hurt the person that was honest. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to some of the rubrics that you may or may not develop of, you know, if it's a 100-point assignment, how much are you putting toward grammar and so forth? Now, I know that is going to feed over into the effectiveness of an argument that's being made, but, you know, that takes time and practice to be able to separate. This person understands what they're saying and can make a decent argument, even if they can't string 3 sentences together. And being able to hit that. I think that's partly what you're saying, Sierra. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, most of my stuff, I don't have rubrics because they don't require
Okay.
quite that in-depthness, right? Because then I'd have a rubric for like five rubrics for 1 assignments, right? But you know, like we take that one question, we get that nice paragraph, you know. Again, you're right, they're hitting the points, but I guess what I'm saying is that I think I'm afraid my biasness accidentally would be there if we teach them all how to use it. We teach them all how to use the calculator, and I don't get as many problems wrong.
Yeah, but even then, this is one of my things I stress. You're going to get out in the workforce, the math is going to be done for you somehow or another, but can you explain what you got? Can you interpret it? I mean, and that's one thing I stressed yesterday in my price analysis class was, you know, I'm not so worried about the math, but can you interpret what you got in terms of result? Because there's plenty that can do the math that can't do the latter.
I'll say, as far as like trying to correct that grading problem that I've experienced, Sierra, is it's very hippie sounding, but moving more towards the ungrading and more contract grading approach for writing assignments, because if students want to write a B paper and they want the B, that's fine. I'll give you get up to the B, you get a B, you're done. But what I care more about, or what I like to see as the instructor, is here's where you started and here's where your paper ended, or here's where your response ended. And so the grading is not based, it's the grade the student get is based on the gap, the change, the way the improvements they were able to make in their response. And it takes a lot of time, but I'm very aware of that. And I have 180 students in this class that all have to write 5-page papers. And that's just one section. There's 3 sections of the class. Go folks. But I thankfully have a lot of TAs that help me with that. I have a solid rubric, but the students get to see their writing improve. And I'm not an English class. This is Intro to Agriculture Economics. But I want to be able to see that they can communicate the concepts from our class. And if I only grade their paper one time, and don't give them it's just, to me, then what's the point of the assignment? Especially since it's not a writing course. So I've tried to kind of scale that thought into my other classes for like farm management, where I want them to respond in that soft skills way from like a professional farm manager viewpoint, and give them a chance to improve their responses. So they might have an initial grade, then they have a secondary grade, and the secondary grade is what actually goes in the grade book. Takes a lot of time, but I have found that my students are much happier, and I am also a lot happier because I feel like the objectives of the course are being met, and I'm not just like grading to stick stuff in a grade book. And I think even if ChatGPT is a thing, you're gonna have to go edit your ChatGPT's response, because I'm gonna give you feedback, because I guarantee you that response won't be perfect. So you're still gonna have a conversation with me or build on it. So I'm not too concerned, but that's my hippified talking about ungrading at Southern's, if you want to come to that teaching workshop.
Yes, please do so. I'll be there as well. Anybody else have any thoughts or want to contribute to the conversation?
So I have a authenticity question that's not exactly an AI question. And you guys are all brilliant, so maybe you have an answer. It cracks me up when my students turn in Excel sheets, because I have spent most of my career grading, looking at Excel, and I can tell if somebody turns in the same file. But sometimes I can't. You guys, does anyone have a way to validate whether two people are sharing the same file that I don't know about?
I think you can look up the owner, can't you? The owner of the
So
file.
if they save it, we use the student version, which is an online thing, and they have to save it themselves to turn it in. And so everybody like overwrites the regular machine answers when they try to turn it in.
Mark, I will tell you on Excel that I think it was last year that I would create a file in Excel, and then that would be the base template for the students, and then save it as a CSV file
Okay.
and upload into Canvas, and then make them save as an Excel file. That way you know who created the file. Excuse me. That may help.
Yes.
One thing that I have run into is, and I'm starting to get a little feisty about it, is I don't know if the students are going in and deleting out the creator of the file name, or the way they're saving it is obscuring that. But that's one potential downside to using the CSVs and then making them save into an Excel file that I've run into. I've got one strategy I'm going to try in a class this semester, and we'll see what happens. So
Yeah, good. I'll try it.
I'm gonna give my hippie answer here again too, of I used to be like so adamant when I taught University of Arkansas about catching the cheaters, and I would just, how can I make sure students aren't cheating and sharing these files? And in the name of learning, like it wasn't like I was trying to catch somebody, but in the name of learning, I was like, I want them to know it. They don't want them to cheat. And I would go to the effort and I would like populate, everyone would get like a different Excel file, and I would hide white text in a random cell. And I would keep track of which student had what file, and then I would like catch them and be like, don't cheat. No. And I don't know, now I'm a hippie, and I just say, we work together, because that in reality, you will in the workplace. If I don't know how to answer a question in my research, I go next door. If you're working for Tyson and you don't know how to do something, you're going to go next door. So I just said, all right, you can work together. You know, I even let students turn in an Excel file, 3 names on one Excel file, and want to reduce my grading, which was great, but also teamwork. The kids who were going to cheat anyway are still going to do badly on the assignment later. So you're still going to be able to measure who learned what and still assess a grade. So as long as it's not like a final exam or something like that, I found just let them work together, encourage group problem solving, and trying to, it's taken me years to adjust that I'm not policing this. I'm here to bring you knowledge. Obviously, I want to have some classroom management and not let cheating be rampant, but just kind of changing your thought process of they're going to do it. I don't need to make that like my focus has helped me.
So I do that actually. I've learned a while back that I don't really want to be a police person. You know, I just want them to learn. But it just, when I see that they actually are turning each other's files, it just like really annoys me. And then, you know, it does, like you said, I ask them Excel questions on the exam. They turn the file in, but they don't know how to do the Excel part, right? So I've got some backstops in there, but I just thought I'd throw that question out. I appreciate the responses.
I really appreciate when they just leave the other student's name on it. So then I know that they've cheated. I had that happen this year. And then I went back to look, and it was a student from 2 semesters ago. And all his assignments, I hadn't caught it because it was a student 2 semesters ago. And yeah, that was marvelous. He didn't make it. But the thing that killed me is that he was making 80 pluses on all the exams. So it wasn't the guy was stupid, like inability to put the information. He was lazy.
Yep.
He was just lazy. So I appreciate when they just put the name on it.
I have one of those last semester, and I just howled with laughter because I don't know how they got hold of this other student's work. I remember the other student, and I'm not sure I would have copied his work.
That's the laziness of not checking how good the student is you're looking at in terms of their paper. Come on now, Stan.
I understand the point that if they are cheating and don't learn it here, they will get caught out in industry. I think that's fine to some degree. But at the same point, we are one of the big things to us here is that when our students go out into industry, they have certain capabilities. And that helps our reputation. It helps keep bringing students in. It helps our students continue to get hired. And so if there is too much of the cheating and too many people that get caught out in industry, well, they'll get caught out and they'll get in trouble or lose their job or whatever it may be, or not move ahead. But it also affects our reputation. Plus, I also have the concern too that I really want my students to learn, and so I want them to. And it really bugs me when I see them cheat. So I often have in-class activities where they work in groups, then a very similar homework, and I tell them, you need to do the homework on your own because that's the next step in learning. You already, I taught it, then you worked in a group and helped each other, and now you need to do it on your own because that's going to help you more. And I said, I'm fine with you working in groups. Then students will come back to me, well, they all have the same thing. I said, you cheated. And they said, well, we're roommates and we work together, we help each other. And I said, that's not working in a group where you sit down and one person does it and then you all copy it. Working in a group is where you each do it on your own computer. And when you don't understand one aspect of it, you ask the others, how do I do that? They help you, and then you continue to do it on your own. So anyway, that's what I usually say to students.
Anything else for today?
I was going to add, if you develop the right reputation with students for maybe being just a hair ornery, you can fake them out. They all think they're getting individual tests or different homework assignments. And, in the classroom, I've had TAs laugh at me because we'll photocopy the same exam if we're doing it on paper on a couple different colors of paper and mix up the questions, have two versions, same questions, but you mix them up. It works. And then, but then for homework and that type of thing, it makes for a lot more grading, but to make them research an issue that is particular to their environment and apply whatever principle we've been learning to a particular environment. It's going to be different for every person. That makes grading a lot harder, but it forces them to think, because I say this in class all the time. We can train a chimpanzee to punch buttons in Excel, but that chimp doesn't know what number to push and has no clue what to do with the answer that comes out of it. One of my colleagues teaches the Excel class. So I always refer to him as the chimp trainer. But when we get them into the regular class, we need to get them to apply things and be able to explain them. And sometimes that means you got to do things a little differently. Boy, that was a babbling mess. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
Yeah. Stan, I wanted to say I take the opposite tactic. I don't use a different color. It's the question order is the exact same, and then I just switch the answer order for the multiple choices. And then students walk in and get a 35, and it makes it very self-evident.
So one of the things that I do is almost all my exams are done online, but in the classroom. So it allows them to not have their books and whatnot all strewn about. But the thing about Canvas is that you can change up the order of the question of the answers, as well as the order in which the questions come through. That has really helped, because even if they can see the person beside them a little bit, they can't. Oh, you're on number 2, you push B, but this may be the totally wrong answer, question or whatnot. So and it has minimized, because I don't have TAs, right? Well, we can't have TAs for that, and so that has sped up my exam grading, and the students love that I get it back quicker. So
Well, this also lets you randomize, like you can have a pool of questions and it will pull one question from it. That's a lot of work. I did it once, but you can, if it's a math kind of question, it's a lot easier to do. And then the person next to them won't get the same question.
yeah, I do it for my farm management. I want them to all have the same questions. That way there's no question in my mind that one question was easier. Like somebody accidentally got a set that I'm a statistician, you could theoretically get a set that was easier for one student over another. So I want to make for sure. So that's the only reason why I don't use I didn't create a bank, but yeah, those are handy. I do those for my quizzes.
Hey, Sierra, I've wanted to try that as far as tests online in the classroom. You've got pretty big classes, as I recall, too. So do you run into problems with your Wi-Fi? Okay.
Not since COVID.
Not okay. Yeah, our classrooms, it just depends, and that's what we've kind of worried about there. But
no, and I will say this: I always bring 2 or 3 extra copies of the exam just in case, because I had a student, we have to duo in, and she left her phone at home, and so she couldn't duo in. Or another one that it gave her the blue screen of death, or the blue, bubbles of death. And so I do always have that very quick here, if I remember to print them. A few times I'm running down the hall to print them. But yeah, so that's another way to be able to still get it accomplished for when you can. And I do have an option where people that only want it via the hard copy. because some people do better, they're screened, they can't focus well, so they get the choice. And obviously, there's usually not enough for me to have to worry about randomizing anything for those few.
Okay.
Well, we're coming down toward the end of the hour. I want to thank everybody that was here and participated or will watch this later. I think we had a really good discussion and hit some AI and some potential strategies and views on it, and then moved into just general plagiarism. So hopefully everybody got something out of it. I want to remind everybody that the next TLC conversation is February 10th at 4 o'clock Eastern, that Friday, following the Southern Ag Econ meetings. We are open as a TLC leadership team to ideas. At this point, we were kind of going to hit some wrap up of the teaching discussions and so forth at SAEA, but we're certainly open to other ideas or suggestions. Who knows, there may be something that comes up between now and the 10th of next month about this topic or something else, and we can certainly bring that in, incorporate. As always, we're still looking for ideas for March and April's conversations. And with that, I'm going to bring this recording to a close. So thank you, everybody.